and welcome to another action-packed, exciting hour of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling Rewatch Along Project. This is podcasting the way it used to be and the way you like it. This show is a production of the Something Else Podcasting Network, and it is episode number 054 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling from February 6, 1993, taped January 18th, 1993, at the Rec Center in Newton, North Carolina. My name is Arya, and welcome to the show. So, I know normally I save all of my personal life crap for something else and fill out the beginning with that. I just want to throw this quick memo out there. I may be asleep by the time I finish recording this episode. I was going to record it about an hour or 2 hours ago, and then I got so fucking tired, and I'm like, okay, I'll just set my alarm clock early for tomorrow morning, wake up, record the show, drop it, and then go to work. Well, in the process of getting ready for bed, I managed to wake myself up. And I imagine it's probably a second wind, but we'll see how this goes. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled spiel. In case this is the first time you've ever checked out the Smoky Mountain Rewatch Long Project, first of all, welcome. Secondly, what we do here on this show, it is really quite simple. We talk about every single episode of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, beginning with episode number 1 on February 1st, 1992. We go all the way to episode number 200 on November 26th, 1995. We talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, the so-so, the okay, the great, the tremendous, the wonderful, the amazing, the out of this world, the one of a kind, the stuff that's unforgettable, the stuff that you wish you couldn't remember, the great stuff, the bad stuff, the in-between stuff, the terrible stuff, the amazing stuff. We watch some matches, we talk about some angles, we listen to some promos, and generally, we have fun for an hour diving back into the Wayback Machine. And yes, as the dates that I mentioned may have indicated, this is the official start of year number 2 of the Smoky Mountain Wrestling TV show. We're now at year number 2 here, folks. If we had a year 1 Smoky Mountain DVD, the cutoff would have been last week. This now starts year number 2. All right. And by the way, at the end of the show, we talk about what else is happening in the world of wrestling at this time. Because I can tell you February 6, 1993 until I'm blue in the face, but it helps to actually be told what the hell's going on. So to give you some context, to make you go, hey, I remember that. Oh, that was at the same time as this? Yes, it was. All right. So without further ado, to keep me from falling asleep, let's go to the intro of this week's show with Bob Caudle and Dutch Mantel. Now remember, last week's episode was scheduled to be the Rock and Roll Express versus the Stud Stable for the Smoky Mountain Tag Titles. The Stud Stable didn't show up to the arena in time, so the Heavenly Bodies filled in and won the belts. Now, it turned out the reason why they didn't make it to the arena was because they were dealing with a flat tire. And then Jim Cornette blew it by pointing out that they had 4 flat tires, which tells you that, the Heavenly Bodies themselves, fucked with the car. So let's go to Caudle and Dutch to introduce this week's show, and we'll go from there.
Welcome to another exciting action-packed hour of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Wrestling the way it used to be and the way you like it. Hi, wrestling fans. I'm Bob Caudle, along with my tag partner right here, Dirty Dutch Mantel. And Dutch, as I said, we got a great hour for all our wrestling fans. Today's program, we're going to see Primetime Brian Lee in action right here. We're going to get a ruling from Commissioner Armstrong and a replay of last week's wild tag team match and the exchange of our tag team belts. We're going to hear from Jim Cornette and all 3, Dutch, of the Heavenly Bodies in our main event. The Stud Stable against the Battens. What about Down and Dirty?
First of all, I'm not going to do it Down and Dirty today, Bob.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Because you know who they want me to interview? They want me to interview the sickest, the most despicable, low-life, egg-sucking dog team I can ever think of, Jimmy Cornette and the Heavenly Bodies, and I'll simply refuse, and you cannot make me do it.
Dutch, you're a professional. You've got a job to carry out.
Cornette, our friendship is over, and I'll never talk to you on Down and Dirty again. Let's draw out the hat for the Beat the Champ contest.
All right, Dutch.
Okay, I'm going to draw a name here.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, and I'm going to read it off, too. Tracy Smothers will face today. I'll read this. the name Sean Powers. Sean Powers, that's what the name said.
All right, that's our Beat the Champ match, fans, and I tell you, we got a great match coming up in the ring right here in just a moment. It's going to be Robbie Eagle against Reno Riggins, and I tell you, I see right now that here comes Mr. Ron Wright and Robbie Eagle over, and Robbie's is supposed to be getting up in the ring. This man was really upset. I thought he was going to, Dutch, I thought you was going to give him a heart attack last week.
He nearly did, but let me tell you, I told these people down here I could take a man. I've got a man here that I've spent about 5 minutes with training the man. But let me tell you, he's one of the top amateur wrestlers in the world, and I put a little of this professional wrestling knowledge in his head, and I'm going to take him up there at that ring and show that long idiot up there that turned me down on the offer that I made, Mr. Reno Riggins. This is what a man can do that I've took under my wing and give him 5 minutes of training.
Don't play with him. Don't play with him.
All right, and that's it. Ron Wright said he's got him ready. Let's go to the ring.
Wrestling fans, introducing from Reno.
Sorry, I wasn't too quick there on the trigger. All right, so, Dutch announces that the friendship with the Cornette is over, and that's actually what it says on his sign this week, because, he always takes his format sheet and puts a note on the back and holds it up at the beginning. And to be honest, usually there's nothing really to talk about. It is what it is, kind of thing. But, this time, hey, it was storyline driven. This time it was saying that Cornette, our friendship is. And so today they're going to discuss the tag team title situation, the main event, the Stud Stable versus the Batten Twins, a main event anywhere in the country. I must tell you that. Dutch refuses to do Down and Dirty because he refuses to interview Jim Cornette or the Heavenly Bodies, and then announces that today's Beat the Champ contender. So what he does, in case it's the first time you've listened to this, they put all the names of everyone on the roster in a hat. Dutch pulls out one name at random, and that person gets a shot at this point, Tracy Smothers and the Beat the Champ TV title. And today's lucky contender is none other than the man, the myth, the legend, Sean Powers. Who the fuck is Sean Powers? I don't know, but we're gonna watch him wrestle later, so yay. So in rolls Mr. Ron Wright, who, to continue off what we've been seeing with Reno Riggins, since Reno turned down his generous offer last week, Mr. Wright went out and lived up to his promise. He found a man to train for 5 minutes to take on Reno, that being Robbie Eagle. And he's trained Eagle for 5 minutes, and we're going to see what happens. And we're going to see what happens actually in our first match, which is in fact Reno Riggins versus Robbie Eagle with Mr. Ron Wright. Eagle, for those who recognize the name, is the man who would go on to be the Maestro in WCW. White Boy joins the announce desk, who says that Reno turning down Mr. Wright shows what an idiot he is. And this was a Mid-South Wrestling expiration of time match. Fast forward 10 years and put first on the show instead of last. Riggins got a 2 count on a roll-up that took 30 seconds to complete, and then pinned Eagle with a neck breaker. And then DWB charges to the ring to confront Reno. And let's go to that confrontation.
You done something? You hadn't done nothing. Who do you think you are? You're the lowest form of human being walking the face of the earth. You've got to be the dumbest, the most stupidest individual walking the face of the earth by turning that man down. Hey, what? You just made me so mad I don't know what to do. But I tell you what I can do, punk.
Oh, he slapped him, Dutch. Spun him around, slapped him right into the ring. The dirty white boy. Look at him holding that chin out. The referee now between them trying to keep Reno Riggins away, and the white boy just standing there.
Well, he's not afraid of Reno Riggins. He got slapped upside the face, and now the white boy taking his time leaving. That's a Smoky Mountain heavyweight champion right there, the dirty white boy. And now, being the good citizen that he is escorting Mr. Wright out of the arena. Here comes Reno Riggins over to our table.
What an insult right here to this young man. A slap right on the side of the face from the dirty white boy.
Let me tell you something, dirty white boy. I'm not your kicking dog. I'm a man. When you smack me, you smack the man. I might not be able to beat you, dirty white boy, but I'm going to go back here and see if I can get a match and I'm going to fight you here next week, boy.
All right, Reno Riggins, he's upset his fans. He's got every right to be after that insult from the Dirty White Boy. We'll be back.
What the hell did I see in Reno Riggins? Remember like a month ago when I talked about how Reno Riggins was this talented enhancement talent who's probably the most talented enhancement talent that never got anything, because even, you go down the list, the Steve Lombardis and Barry Horowitzes, etc. They all got something of a push at some point, and Reno Riggins never got anything. And then apparently Corny was listening to this and went back in time and booked this 30 years ago. And oh my God, Reno Riggins proved to us why he does not ever get a push. So White Boy slaps him. Now, Reno, fiery babyface. Okay, you just got slapped by the champ, but we're not having a fight at the moment. So you're gonna be held back, but you need to put up a fight. The referee's gonna hold you back, but you got to make it look like, you're a tough motherfucker here. Reno Riggins got manhandled by one referee into the corner, and the referee had zero effort at all holding back this professional wrestler who now wants a match with the heavyweight champion. White Boy, to his credit, tried to save the segment by, leaving the ring quickly. And Reno decided to blow the segment as fast as he could, because White Boy is still on the floor. He is still visible. He's right there. If you really want him, he's right there. Instead, he turns left and runs to the announce desk. He announces that he can't beat the White Boy, but wants a match anyway. Hey, Bullet Bob is in Japan, so maybe, hopefully, they don't actually book the match, because how can they book the match if Bullet Bob's in Japan, right? Right? He's going to be back next week. All right, so after that, things are going to start picking up here. Let's go to a promo here first with Dutch. They're going to show us a tape of a Bullet Bob Armstrong phone call, and then Kevin Sullivan and the Night Stalker are going to come in one nice fluid segment.
Dutch, what's that for?
Like this?
Yeah.
It's a shoe baby.
Yeah.
I just got it around for some protection in case somebody wants to jump on me.
Fans, last week we told you that Commissioner Bob Armstrong was in Japan. However, there was so much controversy over last week's title match that Bob has made a statement by telephone, and we have that tape for you right now. Let's watch it.
I've just received a phone call here in Tokyo concerning the tag team titles that were won by the Heavenly Bodies from the Rock and Roll Express. I understand there was a lot of interference. Bobby Eaton's popped on the scene. Killer Kyle's involved. Stud Stable's involved. And they're upset something about flat tires. I don't know what all is going on over there, but I've had the film sent directly to me here in Tokyo. When I view the film, I can make a decision. Until I see the film, I can make no decision. But one decision I can make right now, Tom Pritchard, you've used that loaded boot so many times, brother, your day is over. If any Smoky Mountain official catches you using that boot any time, any place, you'll be fined $5,000. So get ready, Jim Cornette, $5,000. And if you don't like them apples, brother, have Tom Pritchard wrestle barefooted.
All right, fans, and with us right now, here he is, Kevin Sullivan, the master himself with a Night Stalker. You got a big match with Brian Lee. If he breaks you open, if you bleed, boy, you lose. What about that, Kevin?
February 19th, Knoxville, first blood match. Bob Armstrong, you're the one that's a sick individual. You're the one that's mental. A blood match, whoever draws first blood, is this combat? Should I enlist? Should I get a vaccine? Well, Bob Armstrong, you've given me anxieties all week. I could hardly breathe. You see, Bob Armstrong, when my doctor laid me out on the couch and regressed me back, I dreamt I was shackled to the tree of woe. The vultures were flying above me, and I heard the banshees howl, and I heard the death wagon starting to roll. And as it got closer, I heard someone laughing with glee. And I looked, and the face was Brian Lee. And in the wagon, there was nothing but decapitated bodies. He got closer and closer. But you see, the keeper of the gate was beside me. 6'10", 309 pounds. The Night Stalker! The Night Stalker!
Listen to Bob Armstrong! Primetime Brian Lee! Don't you see it's not a good idea to get the master upset? Because anywhere we go, anytime, we do what we want, when we want to do it. Master, it's okay. It's okay, Master.
Whatever magic is in that cloth or whatever it is that he put over his head, I have no idea, but it seems to be.
All right. So it begins with Dutch and his whip. And I believe we've seen the whip before, but, it's kind of fallen out of favor since all Dutch does is commentary. But now that he's in an angle, now that, he's part of the show more than just, announcing, we bring the whip back, and he has a whip that's called Shoe Baby. And it's there for his protection, in case one of these awful, awful heavenly bodies or Rock and Roll Express, I'm sure, try to go after him. So that goes to the phone interview with Bullet Bob Armstrong, which is kind of hilarious because his whole point is that he can't say anything until he reviews the tapes. But apparently the investigation into Dr. Tom Pritchard from a few weeks ago has finally been completed, and he has announced that anytime Tom Pritchard uses a foreign object, he will be fined $5,000. That's a hefty fucking fine here, especially nearly getting paid $100 a match. So, Tom's basically going to work all of 1993 for free if he uses a foreign object once. Then you got the Sullivan promo, and I don't even know where to begin with this. He plugs the First Blood match with Primetime Brian Lee on the 19th. And yeah, it's a Kevin Sullivan promo. Like, he did a good job promoting the match. He's a psycho, and Night Stalker had to put his cloth over Kevin Sullivan's eyes to calm him down, and said that it's a bad thing to make the master upset. So this is a show full of people we haven't seen wrestle in forever. And first up is Killer Kyle with Jim Cornette versus Johnny Kidd. I feel like we haven't seen Kyle wrestle on TV in like 6 months. I mean, I know he was in the Beat the Champ 4-way like 3 weeks ago, but he was pinned in 10 seconds, so I'm sorry, that doesn't really count. Dutch warns the Heavenly Bodies that their paths will cross with the Stud Stable and Dutch one day. Kyle hit one move after another and would pull Kidd up during the count, and then won with the wipe out. After the match, Cornette took off his jacket and symbolically put it over Kidd's face. And, when we say symbolically, we mean literally, because he literally put it over the guy's face. Okay. So let's go now to the greatest promo of Robert Gibson's career. And I say that facetiously because he doesn't say anything. Let's go to Ricky Morton.
Well, fans, I tell you, last week we saw these two guys. What a wild time. I know you fellas have really been upset. Ricky, Robert, I still don't know what the heck happened in that match.
Well, one thing I can tell you, Bob Cuttle, is that when we meet either one of these teams, you better move back because something's fixing to hit the fan. We don't care if we got to meet the Stud Stable or the Heavenly Bodies. And what you see now, it's like old times. He's brought Beautiful Bobby Eaton back. We don't care if it's 2 of you or 15 of you. One thing that we want is to put those Smoky Mountain Tag Team belts back around our waist. And you see Jimmy Cornette, right here is what it's all about. Rock and roll. We're here to stay. We're not here to play. So baby, be ready and take your best shot. We'll be there.
Okay, fans, and we're going to be back right after we take this time.
All right. So as I said, best promo of Robert Gibson's career here. The one where he doesn't say anything. I wish Horner would take that advice, and we're going to find out later that Horner does not take, Robert Gibson's lead in this one here. O-W-E-E-L. Oh, wheel. Why don't I throw an extra L and subtract an E there and say, oh, well. Yeah, We'll just pretend that I was trying to say that on purpose. Anyway, Morton says something is fixing to hit the fan. He doesn't care if it's 2 people or 15 people, but they're going to put the Smoky Mountain Tag Team titles around their waist. And spoiler alert, they pretty much are going to do that. They've been champions, what now, 4 times? Let me think. They won it before Thanksgiving Thunder. They won it twice more during Thanksgiving Thunder. That's 3, and I guess that's it, because they didn't win it back because they didn't lose it and win it back. So yeah, that's 3. And the bodies are at what, 5? 1, 2, 5. The bodies are 5-time champions. The Rock and Roll Express are 3-time champions. And you wonder why the Stud Stable's upset that they can't get a title shot. So speaking of that, we're going to Down and Dirty with Bob Caudle, and he's with Jim Cornette and the Heavenly Bodies. And it starts with 30 seconds of corny before they pitch to a replay of the end of last week's show with the giant brawl. It started with the Stud Stable and the Heavenly Bodies, but then Rock and Roll got involved. Cornette does call Dutch a hairball coward and an overgrown chia pet. And he also says that Bob Eaton coming back is the greatest day of his life. And so they go to the video, they show the video, they come back from the video, and now Bob Caudle's going to ask them about the video.
And there you got another look at it, and they are the tag team champions.
Let me say something. I just want to thank the Lord for bringing Bobby back here because, Tom's in a little bit of trouble as usual. But, Bobby, you pulled us out, baby. I knew you'd come back.
Bobby, I just want to welcome you to the group. I just want to welcome you to the Heavenly Bodies.
Okay,
Thank you, Tom.
Thank God you came here, Bobby.
Let me just say this. Stud Stable, we got 6-man tags signed with you. And that's obvious. Stan Lane, Tom Pritchard, and Bobby Eaton against Robert Fuller, Jimmy Gold, and Dutch Mantel. That's real obvious. But the question was brought up. We've got tag team title matches signed with the Rock and Roll Express. Who's going to defend the belts? I've got a little answer to that question. You see, the Heavenly Bodies are a corporation. And that's the way that I filed the papers when we signed our open contract with Smoky Mountain Wrestling. The Heavenly Bodies Incorporated. So that means that any member of the corporation, Bob Caudle, can defend the Smoky Mountain Tag Team title. Rock and roll, they don't ever shut up, just like a bunch of trained monkeys. So it's like this, Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson. On any given night, when you have a title match with the Heavenly Bodies, you might face Lane and Pritchard, you might face Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton, you might face Pritchard and Eaton, and you're never going to know till the match comes about. And I'm going to say one more thing. There's a lot of things going on in the world these days you can derive some kind of knowledge from. You can derive some kind of strategy to live your life. You see, the United States got some problems with some people over there in another country. Saddam Hussein, Iraq. Well, they had Iraq. They had Saddam Hussein in the palm of their hand one time before. And instead of squeezing that palm and crushing the life out of them, they let them go scot-free. Well, brother, Stud Stable, Rock and Roll Express, when we take prisoners, when we got you in the palm of our hand, the greatest collection of wrestling talent ever formed, we're not going to let you go scot-free. We're going to close and squeeze and crush the stinking life out of you, because nobody can stand up to Jim Cornette's Heavenly Bodies now. I don't care who they are.
Let me say something. Come here, Bobby. Let me tell you something, Bob Caudle. It's a crying shame. It's a sin what the women around these parts will do just to get Beautiful Bobby and Sweet Stan to notice them. I'm telling you, they will degrade themselves. They will humiliate themselves. They will crawl on their bellies across cut glass just to get Beautiful Bobby and Sweet Stan to cast an eye their way.
All right, fans. Jim Cornette, the Heavenly Bodies Incorporated. Somebody's got to have to get up early in the morning to figure out what to do with these. We'll be back. Right now, let's take time out for this.
So, the gist of this, you heard it. It's, the Heavenly Bodies Incorporated, which I think I'm sorry, maybe y'all have a different opinion of this, but I think it just sounds fucking stupid. Like I get what they're going for here, but it's like we're just trying to retroactively change shit and, change rules here to make things, more, to make things make sense, we got to retroactively change shit. And so we got to make it now the Heavenly Bodies Incorporated, where any two members could defend the belts. And here's the problem with that. And we can argue a timeline, and we're going to talk more about, this later on in this episode. But this WCW deal does not last long. Like, I think pretty much it's going to last like the next 6 weeks. And that's only because they had a signed contract with Watts up to that point. Now, Watts and Cornette definitely had plans to do more than just this, but, and we'll get to this later, Watts is on his way out the door. So it's like, I get, but the problem with it too is like, and I'm sure someone's like, well, they didn't know he was going to be out the door. Cornette tells the story that the reason why they had a written contract was because he knew he was on his way out the door and didn't want Cornette to get fucked on his money at the end. And so if they pretty much knew that, then they knew that Bobby Eaton wasn't lasting long. And in my opinion, they didn't have to go about this runaround to backdate things and to say, hey, we filed a corporation and, so any of our tag team title matches can be any two of the three men, especially when they're not going to be around. I'm sorry, like, spoiler, Bobby Eaton is not around very long. Like, it's a fucking fact here. It's a nice addition. And, it makes, in my opinion, for a decent draw, saying, hey, it's the reunion of the Midnight Express now, even though I don't know if we can actually call them the Midnight Express or not, but still. But I think that would be a bigger draw than saying, oh, any two members of the Heavenly Bodies, it could be Bobby and Stan. But, this way you can make people buy tickets hoping to see Bobby and Stan and give them Stan and Tom, which the problem with that is if a single person buys a ticket because they hear the Heavenly Bodies, any two of the three are going to be in the match, so it could be Bobby and Stan. So if any one person bought a ticket hoping to see Bobby and Stan and sees Stan and Tom, sees Bobby and Tom, well, now they feel cheated out of their money. And is that something you really want to do, especially for a new company? And I get, I don't want to say it's my job to nitpick because it certainly isn't, but I'm going to nitpick some shit here. And it's a great promo. It's somehow they got around to do it so they can say, hey, we're, going to have a tag title match where any two of the three can participate. But it's a bullshit fucking way to go around it. Just, you don't even have to, we're going to put the tag titles on the line. You're telling me that, if you would have just promoted Stan and Bobby versus the Rock and Roll Express, that would have sold fewer tickets than if you said that was a title match? Fuck no. Fuck no. Let's be honest here. The draw would have been seeing Stan and Bobby as a team for the first time in, like 2.5 years when Stan and Corny walked out of WCW. That's the draw. The tag titles are not the fucking draw. They are there to give purpose to this never-ending feud. And I know this never-ending feud's only been going on 4 months with the Heavenly Bodies and Rock and Roll. But spoiler alert, it never ends. But anyway, now that I'm done ranting and raving, Corny rants and raves about Saddam being captured but let go, and turned it into saying that they will crush the stinking life out of the Stud Stable and the Rock and Roll Express. Primetime Brian Lee versus the Dark Secret. When was the last time Brian Lee wrestled on TV? That is the question of the fucking day. Believe it or not, Lee had a better match with Dark Secret than Horner did last week. He had a really nice belly-to-belly suplex and won with a cancellation. Outran Night Stalker and Kevin Sullivan, who cornered Primetime Brian Lee, when our good friend Tim Horner runs out and threw him aboard. Whatever happened was so bad that we cut to the fans, and when we came back, Sullivan and Night Stalker were leaving. I gotta say here, this just further proves my point that Horner is being set up to fail at this point as punishment for that thing with Bullet Bob a month ago. Because, again, they left in his botched spots last week. And Cornette has famously said, and if you ask him, he'll say it again. If there was shit that looked fake, it looked phony, that it, exposed the business, he would edit it off by airing crowd shots. And, we've seen shittier Horner promos than usual make air. We've seen Horner doing botched spots make the air. You're never going to make me believe that this isn't an effort to bury Horner here. All right. So speaking of burying Horner, when he's not being buried in editing, he does a pretty good job of burying himself. So let's go to a promo with technically Primetime Brian Lee.
Fans, right now, let's get Tim Horner, Primetime Brian Lee in. And Lee, Brian, it looked like that they didn't want to wait until that first blood match. They wanted to draw blood right then.
Yeah, that's right, Bob, Tim. Thank you very much.
Let me tell you something. You know something, Brian? Ever since you came to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, we've become pretty good friends. And I tell you what, I know you've had a lot of troubles with that Kevin Sullivan, and every time you get him right where you want him, it seems you got to worry about that Night Stalker. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Friends stick together, Brian. And as long as you're my friend, and I know you will be, I'll be right there for you. And you've got a match coming up in Knoxville, Tennessee, February 19th, first blood match. And I've got the Stalker first, and I'm going to make sure that you get a fair shake in that blood match.
I want to thank you, Tim. You know, normally Primetime Brian Lee tries to run the straight and narrow, but Kevin Sullivan, you've caused me to do what I don't want to have to do. Every once in a while, man has to take it up a notch, and that's exactly what Primetime Brian Lee's going to do. Kevin Sullivan, Knoxville, Tennessee, on the 19th. The doctors aren't going to have to tell Kevin Sullivan what's wrong with him. We're going to find out because I'm going to bust his head wide open.
All right.
So, in addition to having a good match, I like that Brian Lee promo. Was it the greatest promo you'll ever see? Fuck no. It wasn't even the greatest promo on this show. It wasn't even the greatest promo in the last 10 minutes on this show. But, it did the trick there. He promised to bust open, Kevin Sullivan after all the times we've seen Sullivan bust him open. It's time for revenge, and it's time to do it in a very graphic way. And in a way, it also lets the feud continue because no one's getting pinned. Spoiler alert, in a first blood match, no one gets pinned. So, it's going to give somebody a win here and doesn't blow up the feud if you don't want it to. Of course, Horner, being Horner, can't accept the fact that this isn't his promo time. Fucking Caudle, asks Brian Lee a question. Brian Lee says one sentence, thanking Tim for his help, and Tim immediately grabs the mic away. Like, if you were telling me he was turning heel, I'd fucking believe you. But he doesn't turn heel. He doesn't. This is just Tim Horner being a dick. Beat the Champ TV champion Tracy Smothers versus Sean Powers. So before this, Caudle recaps that if Tracy wins 3 more matches, then he'll get a $5,000 bonus and retire as champion. I don't want to alarm you, but Sean Powers did not defeat Tracy Smothers. And so far, this title is basically just something to give some sort of meaning to an enhancement match, because even the dumbest fan out there did not think that, Sean Powers was going to win the title. And I'll tell you what, they do these tapings where they tape 3 shows in one night. So this is the second time these fans have seen Tracy Smothers. They loved him just as much this week as last week. They lost their shit for him. Tracy wins the top rope reverse elbow. To the best of my knowledge, we will never see Sean Powers again. So thank you for your service to the Beat the Champ TV title, Mr. Sean Powers. And, good luck in your future endeavors. So Tracy's got another $1,000. This is his 3rd win, so he has 2 more matches to go. If he can win them both, he will get the $5,000 bonus. And Caudle wants to ask him about that and what his plans may be for that money.
With our Smoky Mountain Beat the Champ, Tracy Smothers.
I tell you, this guy right here, he's making a habit of these $1,000 checks. 2 more, a $5,000 bonus. You're going to be undefeated and retire undefeated.
Thank you, Mr. Caudle. You know something? I can do a lot of things, for that $1,000. I go get me a new riding lawnmower. That's the first thing I can do. You know, gosh, 2 more times. If I can win 2 more matches, then I win $5,000. If I win $5,000, I'm going to throw a big old party. That's for doggone sure. You know, last week, I was sitting back and watched the TV, and I saw a young man, a tremendous athlete, Reno Riggins, and I saw that Ron Wright and that nothing happening dirty white boy try to sway his thinking to get him to come with him. Yeah. Hey, white boy, you better get all the help you can get, because, brother, I am hot on your trail. I'm a southern-born, southern-bred thoroughbred, born right in the volunteer state of Tennessee, and I volunteer to whoop your butt like your mama should have done a long time ago. You want some of me, you ain't got to go very far. Reno, my hat's off to you, my man. It's off to you. You're a tremendous athlete. You don't need trash like that. As for you, white boy, I got one thing to say. Next time me and you go head up, I'm going to load my lip with some dip, and I'm going to jack some jaw, Southern style. Thank you.
All right, fans, and the match has been signed, and Tracy's laid the gauntlet down. He's ready, and we'll be back. Don't go away. Right now, time out for this.
Okay, so some very good news. Bob Caudle actually held the microphone near Tracy Smothers' mouth this week. This legitimately may be the first time since Tracy Smothers came to the company that the announcer held the microphone up, and so he didn't have to bend over at a 90-degree angle at the waist in order to cut his promo. And it's like, it's not just Caudle, because Les Thatcher did it too the one time that Les interviewed Tracy. So the point of this, though, he congratulates Reno Riggins for standing on his own. He has to say that. I'm sure in reality, he's like, you dumbass motherfucker, you should have listened to Mr. Ron Wright. But Tracy does the thing that you're not supposed to do, because, he's spending his money before he wins it. And we all do it. We play the lottery, and the lottery's, $500 million for Powerball. We sit here and we think to ourselves, man, if I win that, I'm going to buy this, that, and the other thing. And of course, none of us ever fucking win it because the odds are absurd. But, it's fun to spend it. And I guess that's what Tracy's doing here. But really, you need to learn to not spend your money before you have it here. But he said he's going to buy a riding mower if he wins the $5,000 and plans on throwing a huge party. So, good luck to him. Hopefully he wins it so he gets his riding mower. And, the fans get a nice party. Actually, he doesn't actually say that the fans will be invited to the nice party. It's kind of implied here. And then he said that he will load his lip with some dip and knock White Boy the fuck out. So then we get our main event. Stud Stable with Dutch Mantel versus the Batten Twins, who, again, haven't been on TV, has a team wrestling in at least 6 months. Like that was during the time when they had such a giant discrepancy between babyface and heel tag teams. So I think the only heel team they had was the Heavenly Bodies. And then they had the Fantastics, the Rock and Roll Express, the Batten Twins, and I feel like there was at least one other team. So like 4 baby faces and 1 heel team. And so they brought in the Stud Stable and they got rid of the Batten Twins and they tightened up the tag team division. But anyway, it's nice to see that the Stud Stable actually showed up this week. Fuller, just, it's kind of funny. Like, you would think, like, Stud Stable's feuding with the Heavenly Bodies. Okay. Obviously, the Stud Stable is being wronged here. So, they might be turning babyface, or at least babyface for the feud, or as I term it, a maybe face. They don't really do that here, because Fuller is literally mocking some fat fans at ringside, walking to the ring, doing the pantomime giant stomach over his normal giant stomach. Cornette joins the broadcast table here, and he mocks Dutch for having a big head and greasy hair. Fuller claimed that one of the Battens pulled his tights, and this was kind of funny here. So Fuller claims that one of the Battens pulled his tights, and to demonstrate this, because just saying so and pantomiming on your own tights, the referee may not figure out what you're trying to say. So Fuller grabs the referee's pants and yanks them upwards and wedgies the fuck out of this referee. And unfortunately, it's one of those things. Cornette and Caudle are busy talking about whatever. And I mean, it's probably a spot better to be ignored anyway, but still, it was hilarious. Caudle brings up Cornette talking shit about Bullet Bob, and Bob's in Japan, so Corny continues to rip on him. He says that the Heavenly Bodies are sometimes being booked twice a night in the ring, in a six-man tag and in a tag team title match. And then Fuller slaps on a rolling leg lock for the win. And it was a little contrived at first, and I get, Fuller's been wrestling for a long ass time at this point, and we're closer to his last bump than his first bump. Um, However, like, it was a little slow in putting it together here, but it was a nice move once he actually got it on. And so the show's going to end here because, yes, we're already at the end of the show here. With a stud stable promo. Let's go to Bob.
Fans, right now, let's see if we can get the stud stable in and Dutch Mantel. First, I got to find out about that hold, which I don't think we'd ever seen. What the heck?
Tell you about that hold.
What?
It's a leg breaker, brother.
What the heck
World
is it?
famous known, the Fuller leg lock. There ain't a man that's got up out from it and walked out of the ring yet. No. You know, years ago, it used to be called the inside toe hold, but my daddy and my family changed it to the Fuller leg lock because we broke more legs with that thing than money can count, son. I want to say something here. I want to make it real plain to everybody. What we're wanting right now, we're wanting a title shot at the Heavenly Bodies. But I'll tell you what, rock and roll, you figure you want to get nasty and get in there with the stable? Just try to stand in our way. I don't care if they bring that good-for-nothing Bobby Eaton. I don't care who comes along with your cornet. We'll take you on. But, son, what we're after is those belts. And, Jimmy, we're going to have them, ain't we?
You're exactly right. We was robbed out of our title match, and we're going to get it, brother, one way or another. Heavenly Bodies, rock and roll. It don't matter who it is. We're going to have him belt.
Heavenly Bodies, hell, we're the prettiest thing that's ever come
We
in
got to
this
go, fans. Next week, Rock and Roll Express and more right here. We'll see you then. So long for now.
Oh, right. So, I mean, they gave it a name. It's the Fuller leg lock. Fuller said that it used to be called an inside toe hold, but they changed the name of it because his daddy broke so many legs with it. Ultimately, they won a tag team title match and said that the Rock and Roll Express better stay out of their way. Now, I know Bullet Bob is in Japan and they're trying to cover it up by saying he needs to review the tapes, but we've also seen Sandy Scott has booking power with Bullet Bob away. Why wouldn't Sandy Scott, just give the Stud Stable another title match? Or at least come up with a reason for it. They could have said, oh, well, because they didn't show to their tag team title match, last week, they got moved down the rankings, so they got to go back up it, which is still bullshit, but at least gives you an excuse. Here, the excuse is they had a title match, and now they don't. And, Lord knows this isn't the only company to ever do this angle, and I'm pretty sure every company ever has just ignored the fact that, the other person who got screwed out of their title match got screwed out of the title match. But anyway, it's an argument, we'll live to fight another day here. So I know I don't really rate these things usually, but, if I had to give a rating on this show, we had some good promos. I don't want to say great promos. We had some good promos. We didn't really have any, fantastic wrestling on this show. Because even the main event, which sounds promising, is still very meh. If I had to give it a rating from 1 to 10, I'd give it a 6.5. Maybe close to a 7, but, 6.5. It's a good score, not great. It's not a failing score by any stretch of the imagination. But, it's not a show that I'm going to tell you that unless you're a completist like me, you do not have to go out and hunt down this episode on YouTube or, a torrent site and watch it. Of course, if you're a completist like me, hey, go ahead. You'll find it online. So 54 down, 146 to go. And before we go, let's tell you about what else is happening this week in wrestling. And we have some big news, and we kind of hinted at it earlier. And the big news is that Bill Watts and Jim Ross have officially been removed from Power in WCW this week. And it's hilarious because Bill Watts is always, looked at as he was the guy in charge of WCW. But the fall of Jim Ross in WCW has a lot to do with the fact that he was linked so closely with Bill Watts. and Watts put him up on a pedestal. Watts gave him a whole shit ton of power, and when Watts got, the boot, JR pretty much couldn't stick around. And this is going to get played out here in a while, but for now, let's tell you how things are at this moment on February 6, 1993. So Bill Shaw and Bob Dew, who are the ultimate, people in charge of the wrestling division, even though Watts was put in charge of it, they're the people above him. They have decided to take a more hands-on approach, and they have divided the company into three divisions: a pay-per-view division headed by Sharon Cidello, a TV division headed by an unnamed individual who's expected to be named shortly. Spoiler alert, you all know who this is. And the wrestling product headed by Watts. So basically, Watts is the head of the booking committee, but Sharon Cidello and the TV division head have the final say-so as to what airs on TV and pay-per-view. So in theory, they can, outvote Bill Watts or outvote the booking committee. JR, he's done broadcasting for the most part. He is removed from all broadcasting. He's off Saturday night. He's off whatever other shows he was on. And his final two assignments are currently the Super Brawl 3 show in a couple weeks and the March 7th broadcast of the January 4th Tokyo Dome show. And he's going to be reassigned to working in syndication sales. I should note that JR does not make it to Super Brawl. And, the January 4th Tokyo Dome show, that's a story in and of itself. But, we'll get to that when we get to that. Watts is still in charge of contract negotiations. However, overruling him is, to quote somebody on YouTube more popular than me, super easy, barely an inconvenience. And then the other big news of the week, and this would be big news, the number one news story any other week, but Hulk Hogan is officially returning to the ring at WrestleMania, where he will team with Brutus Beefcake against Ted DiBiase and IRS, and also Jimmy Hart has turned babyface to manage Hogan and Beefcake. We all know what happens from here. So that's going to do it for this week's show. I'm still awake. Hooray, made it 46 minutes, give or take a minute. So, I want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it. Continue to check out all the other shows here on this fine podcasting program, and we'll talk to you again in 7 days.